Talaga.
Talaga. No, I don't. Is that how you pronounce it? Talaga. Talaga. No, it's Talaga. I don't know. Oh! Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to my series, The Language of Beauty, where I take you all on an existential search on what makes life beautiful. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, my name is Maynah, and like many people on this globe, I am an avid art enthusiast of this world. And this series is meant to be a representation of the existential journey we're all on to find out just what exactly is beauty and why do we find particular things beautiful. Tonight's episode is one that I am extremely excited about embarking on with you all, and that's because this month we'll be looking at MJ the Musical. Of course, around the time that this video has been filmed and uploaded onto the platform, the biopic Michael has just been released in Australian theatres. And as it usually is whenever it comes to the King of Pop, it has generated a worldwide buzz. It is why I thought it was fitting to do something MJ themed this month, and thus why tonight we will be looking at the musical. We'll be breaking it down to the narrative of the musical, the songs, the choreography, the costumes, sets, and lighting designs, and the origin of the musical with its thematic elements. Keep in mind that we will be going through the plot of this musical, so there will be very heavy spoilers ahead. The spoilers aren't exactly serious though, since it is talking about the life of Michael Jackson. But we will be getting into the numbers and the role they play in the musical, so just keep that in mind. I'm super excited for this episode, so let's get started. Before we begin looking at elements that contribute to the musical's success, we need to look at what it is first. So MJ the Musical is a jukebox musical, which means it includes already existing popular songs, which is then repurposed to fit in the musical. And it follows the celebrity Michael Jackson and his crew in rehearsals in the lead up to his Dangerous World Tour back in 1992. We follow journalist Rachel and her cameraman Alejandro as they try to uncover details about Michael Jackson's personal life throughout rehearsals. And we as the audience are taken back in time to relive Michael Jackson's memories from childhood to his current career as he may have seen it. It includes many of Michael Jackson's popular hits, such as Thriller, Wanna Be Starting Something, and even Earth Song, and so much more. And it repurposes them into the musical to represent certain facets of the King of Pop that we know, but never really think too deeply into. As the playwright of this musical, Lynn Nottage, mentioned, this musical was structured as a mixtape of his life that allows us to ask questions and witness many key moments during his development as an artist. In a way, this musical is an artistic psychological exploration of the way Michael Jackson saw the world. And each song that has been selected to be in this musical is meant to represent a psychological aspect of him. And it certainly encourages us to think about the reasons as to why particular songs in his music career were made. Let's go through the story now. It is June in 1992, and it is 2 days until the Dangerous World Tour kicks off in Munich, Germany. And of course, the cast, crew, and MJ are feeling the creative tensions. Michael Jackson has new ideas that he wants to pitch to his manager, Rob, despite the short time frame until opening night. Rachel and Alejandro are allowed backstage access to film a documentary about the creative process behind the tour, but they want to know more about MJ's personal life that is constantly scrutinized, yet also somehow very elusive. Michael begins revealing details about how his music career started when he was a little boy, when he was first discovered by his parents to have a natural talent in singing, before his father, Joseph Jackson, immediately got him to work in the band consisting of Michael's brothers, the Jackson 5. As the rehearsals for the world tour progresses, simultaneously we also see Michael Jackson grow in his life, and we're given insights into the tense relationship he always had with his father and how it was hard to differentiate Joseph as a father from a manager, all the way to MJ starting his own solo music career, where he was endlessly driven by the innate drive for perfection that his father had instilled on him and his brothers, and how that drive was the reason why MJ had won many awards and achieved outstanding success in his career. At the end of Act 1, there is a press conference that MJ attends after rehearsals, where he announced his world tour and his hopes to raise money for his Heal the World Foundation. But he is ultimately drowned out by the many reporters who continuously ask questions about his reputation, his personal life, and even the allegations against him. In Act 2, Michael Jackson is told that his last-minute ideas were not financially feasible, but he is adamant on finding a way to make it work because of his belief that his fans deserved nothing but the best performance that he could give. Rachel and Alejandro eventually push a little too far with their journalistic prodding before they are told by Rob not to approach MJ anymore. MJ finds Rachel himself and opens up a bit more to her about the way he sees the world, and although he reveals himself to be a flawed human being too, he shows that he is sincere in wanting to change the world through music. The musical ends with Michael Jackson opening up the world tour with his iconic toaster entrance before the cast and crew emerge to sing a reprise of his famous hits. As you can see, as the rehearsal progresses, we also simultaneously see MJ taking us back in time through his memories and showing us how particular events in his life had contributed to particular songs being made. And this is an element that I'm excited to tackle next. The ones in charge of music direction and arrangements in the musical are David Holzenberg and Jason Michael Webb, with Gareth Owen in charge of sound design. And what they wanted for this musical was to take the iconic Michael Jackson songs that everyone knew and loved and rearrange them so that they would properly fit into the story that the playwright Nottage and the director Christopher Wheeldon wanted to tell of the King of Pop. And they wanted it to be live music as well, with the best soul singers they could find in musical theater to give each song a new life, from the backup singers in the Dangerous World Tour rehearsals to the ones who play the Jackson 5 and Catherine and Joseph Jackson to the actor who plays MJ himself. And find these singers they did because Michael Jackson songs are notoriously hard to sing. And as I said before, each song of MJ the Musical has a part to play in being a representation of the different facets of MJ's personality and core beliefs. They consist of Michael Jackson's discography, and they've been repurposed in order to be a deconstruction of why the King of Pop felt the need to create these songs in the first place. For example, Wanna Be Starting Something was used in Act 1 as a way to, yes, historically represent the fact that it was featured on his Thriller album, but it was also used to highlight that highly competitive drive that MJ had to become the best and earn the respect of his peers in music. And they repurposed that song in order to heighten the cinematic tension, to take us through the entire journey of him and Quincy Jones making the Thriller album, to MJ winning 8 Grammy Awards for it. For the finale of Act 1, a mashup of They Don't Care About Us and Earth Song was used to juxtapose the tension of MJ wanting to use the press conference to bring attention to his music and his charity, and the press and the media wanting to focus on his reputation and his personal life instead. In Act 2, Human Nature was used as a way for MJ to show Rachel the beauty he sees in the world and his inherent longing to experience it and be a part of it, but he wasn't able to because of his life in the limelight. This slow, bluesy introduction and instrumentation of The Way You Make Me Feel was used to represent one of the choreographic influences MJ had on his dancing, Bob Fosse, and that piece of music lined up very well with the smooth, abstract precision that Fosse was known for, and that Michael Jackson built upon with his own style. And one of my absolute favorites, Thriller, one of the showstoppers in Act 2 since it represents the terror he felt his whole life while living under his father's rule, and the horrifying weight of Joseph Jackson's impossible standards for perfection that MJ had to live up to ever since he was little and still carried through at that point in his life. From all of this, MJ the Musical does extremely well with repurposing the already iconic songs of Michael Jackson and fitting them into the narrative that makes the audience feel like we were hearing it for the first time again, but in a completely artistically contextual manner that enables us to think deeply about the reasons as to why he created these songs in the first place. And this is only one element as to why MJ the Musical just hits. Of course, you can't have a musical about Michael Jackson without some top-notch dance and choreography. And out of all the musicals that I've watched, for me, the choreography for MJ the Musical remains unmatched. Christopher Wheeldon was not only the director for MJ the Musical, but he was also the main choreographer. As choreographic consultants, he brought in Rich and Tone Talluega, who are brothers who worked directly with Michael Jackson back in the 1990s, and Wheeldon brought them in so that they would be able to teach the lead actors for MJ the movement vocabulary, so that they would be able to honor the King of Pop with the respect that he deserved. A testament to the choreographer's success is that when we watch MJ the Musical, the dancers do not feel like they are just the ensemble who are part of a musical. Instead, when we watch them, we feel like we are seeing competitive dancers at work. Wheeldon's choreography is very highly skilled and technical, and it does not conform to the usual Broadway musical theater style of dance. Instead, it combines elements from hip-hop, jazz, ballet, disco, practically every style of dance you could think of, and it merges it into this seamless blend with that iconic Michael Jackson flair that watching the dancers for each number does not at all feel stagnant and boring. Since the musical does span from Jackson's childhood all the way up to the 1990s, what I thoroughly enjoyed about the choreography was how Wheeldon blends in the dance trends of the decades into the choreography, depending on the era of MJ we were witnessing. For example, in the mashup of Don't Blame It on the Boogie, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, and Dancing Machine, they let the choreography reflect the 1960s and 70s disco-inspired dance style, and even paying tribute to the robot sensation that Michael Jackson had popularized during the Jackson 5's live performance of Dancing Machine. My favorite part of the whole musical is actually near the beginning of Act 2, where MJ introduces us to his three biggest inspirations for his dance style: Fred Astaire, Bob Fosse, and the Nicholas Brothers. He then proceeds to dance with each of them, showcasing to us the direct inspirations behind their styles and how that's compiled to create the iconic Michael Jackson style of dance that we all know today, before it leads to the build-up to Smooth Criminal. But the whole point of this is that through the choreography alone, we can also see the evolution of the dance styles, which is a very nice bonus surprise for the audiences with a huge interest in dance. And it showcased the intricate knowledge Wheeldon clearly has about the various dance styles and their histories. And of course, the Talluega brothers ensured that the spirit of Michael Jackson was inherently seen with each movement through their consultations. And the combination of these choreographers' skills in being able to turn all of that into a story through movement alone was an essential part in the success of MJ the Musical. MJ the Musical relies on a huge cast of characters to tell the stories of multiple events in Michael Jackson's life, and Wheeldon made the decision that the actors would be playing dual roles in order to further contrast the difference between the timeline of the rehearsals for the world tour and when we're transported to a memory of MJ's mind. For example, the actor playing the manager for the Dangerous World Tour, Rob, would also play Joseph Jackson. One of the backup singers for MJ would also play as Katherine Jackson. Multiple ensemble members from the show would double up as Jermaine, Marlon, and Jackie Jackson. In order to differentiate which role the actor is currently playing, costumes were used, and the credit for costume design goes to Paul Tazwell. For these characters, he wanted to make sure that the costumes were versatile enough to suit both characters they were playing if there was no time for a costume change. but also still had their own distinct character to them, so that we would already ascertain who they were in the current scene. For the actor playing Rob in Joseph Jackson, for example, he would always be dressed in a typical black turtleneck and black trousers to indicate he was MJ's manager. But whenever there were scenes of him becoming Joseph Jackson, he would normally have on a jacket of some sort to differentiate him from Rob, even if they were played by the same actor. The costumes were also used to represent a character's growth throughout the years, and this is no prevalent than it is with MJ himself. Now obviously Tazewell took direct inspiration from all the actual clothes Michael Jackson had worn throughout his career, with his preference for more shiny, glamorous outfits. But as we see the multiple actors of MJ throughout his different stages in life, we get to experience MJ also trying to find his own sense of style, especially when he begins to branch out and pursue his solo career away from his father. We get his black and white outfit, which is primarily used throughout the current time period. We get throwbacks to his iconic black and white Billie Jean and Smooth Criminal outfit with just a change of his jacket. We of course get his Thriller costume, his blue and gold Grammy Award outfit, and so much more. And it is not just MJ's character growth that we see through his costumes, we also see it in the other member of the Jacksons. When they were still the Jackson 5, we see them all having the same uniform stage outfits, with MJ of course having a slight difference to showcase how he was always considered the star of the group. But then later in the musical, as MJ recalls how his family coerced him into doing a reunion tour with his brothers, we see them all growing up and in very distinct jackets of their own that represented each of their personalities. We're talking varsity, black and gold, plaid, blue and gold, and even red leather with spikes. And of course, who could forget about the costumes for the ensemble dancers? Because the dancers are meant to be a contextual atmospheric element, which would clue us in to what time period or what memory of MJ we were in, they would have a whole range of costumes representing that as well. In the rehearsal period, of course, they would be in casual athletic attire. So sleeveless shirts, baggy pants, leggings, sneakers, shirts, and all the like. However, as we transition into, let's say, Wanna Be Starting Something, the ensemble members are dressed in 80s glam inspired costumes with fringe jackets, sequin dresses, and sparkly jumpsuits. In They Don't Care About Us, where they portray the media press, they are in long black trench coats with red and white boots. And in Smooth Criminal, as they transition from the Fosse tribute, they are in sleek, black and white, skin-tight dynamic attire that really puts emphasis on their precision lines. And then we have the iconic Thriller, where they are in ragged, torn versions of MJ's iconic outfits with skull masks, in order to represent the different eras of MJ and how they are still haunted and spiritually controlled by Joseph Jackson. Overall, the costumes of MJ the Musical had a lot more variety than I remembered watching. For the times when the ensemble and the actors could do a full costume change, it was always such a pleasant, spectacular surprise to see just how much of their wardrobe they had swapped out for the next scene. And for the moment where they must go quite minimal for the actors to quickly swap back to their other roles, the costumes were certainly versatile enough to keep us within the world of the story without breaking the immersion. Now, the masters behind the actual visual work of immersing us into the glamorous world of Michael Jackson came in three. Natasha Katz, who did the lighting design, Peter Nigrini, who did the projection design, and Derek McLean, who did the scenic design. The reason why I decided to group these three fields into one segment altogether is because with MJ the Musical, these three designers have somehow found that perfect synergy where the set works seamlessly with the lighting and the projection, and it all made for a wonderful spectacle. What is worth mentioning is that in between scene and set changes, personally, I didn't even notice the transition of most of the set pieces from one to the other. I don't know if that was because I was too immersed in the story or too distracted and in awe of the skill of the dancers and the choreography, but I remember that every time there was a set change, it was always such a delight for me because it was so seamless. Let me start off with set and scenic design. Because most of the narrative is based in the rehearsal space for the Dangerous World Tour, large wooden panes of windows span the entire back and sides of the stage, with a door at the back where the characters can actually come in and out of. And we as the audience can see them walking across the stage in order to increase the immersion of a real-life rehearsal building. The actual sets on stage, compared to other musicals, are quite sparse, usually consisting of rehearsal equipment and crates that are wheeled around and used as props. There is a small corner platform for the live band that can be wheeled up and on through the wings, and in true musical theater fashion, panels and beds are used to indicate different rooms in MJ's memories, along with a portable Hollywood sign with each letter that can be moved in human nature. Most of the stage is usually cleared though in order to make room for the sprawling movements and choreography. The one set that is considered the fixed one, so the one that is usually on stage most of the time, is the large wooden windows. What I actually love about this particular set was that we could still see through the windows to the blank screen at the back and the sides of the stage. And it is with this blank screen that most of the magic happens through lighting and projection. And they are very clever in how they played this. Whenever they did not want the audience's attention to drift off to the sets while the numbers are being performed, they tend to keep the windows there and do the projections on the white screens behind them, giving us the impression that we are indoors in our own world, separate from the outside world. For example, with every rehearsal scene such as Beat It and Keep the Faith. However, whenever they want to deploy the wow factor, the windows are gone, and no holes are barred as they go crazy with the lighting and the projection and the sets. One such example of this that first comes to mind for me is during the Jacksons medley of Don't Blame It on the Boogie, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, and Dancing Machine. This is because from the two verses, it is grown-up MJ first singing it to his crew before the set transitions into a younger MJ with his brothers as Joseph Jackson takes over. And then the lighting changes and the lit up signs from Motown is lowered from the ceiling, and then the Jacksons begin to perform, where MJ then starts the sensation of the robot. And with the sensation of the robot, done to the music of Dancing Machine, multiple spotlights are put on each dancer as a screen is lowered, displaying a news headline saying how MJ's robot dance takes over the world, conveying how the dance had gone viral worldwide. The two biggest spectacular visual numbers, funnily enough, start by jump scaring us straight into the song. And frankly, I would have it no other way because it really helped land that sudden jarring punch to our senses that just immediately overwhelms us with visuals and visuals and visuals. And the two numbers that I'm talking about is Smooth Criminal and Thriller. I mean, seriously, imagine you're in the audience, just chilling, enjoying the smooth, bluesy, slow precision choreography of MJ being inspired by Bob Fosse. As the light begins to dim and glow a very, very dark red, which looks like a photographer's dark room, as the eerie shushing and hissing noise begin to grow louder and louder as MJ continues to glide continuously across the stage. And you begin to wonder when he's gonna stop dancing because he has to stop his continuous movements soon, right? And oh my god, this is taking such a long time and there's no actual music and we can barely see it because everything is so red and dark. There's just this strange prolonged hissing noise and bam! Straight into the neon lights of Smooth Criminal. And there are no wooden windows to be found, just straight, bright, neon-soaked projection of a glamorous noir scene. Thriller by far is the grandest set of the musical, considering the sheer scale of it and the fact that it spans 2 layers of the stage. I cannot find a proper photo of it except this one, and you can't really see it that well. But I will let you know that where you see the glowing eyes at the top and how it connects to the actual arch design, that is the first layer near the front of the stage. There is another layer midway, a bit further back. In person, it is huge, and it is one of the most spectacular sets of the entire musical. And these are just two of the biggest visual numbers of the musical. There are still so many other numbers that stick to this quality of glitzy lighting, flashy projection, and minimal yet versatile scenic design that just all blends together and just keep going and changing as the story progresses. Just when you think they've exhausted all they can do with the setting, they are quick to change your mind again with the next number with the snap of your finger. I cannot think of another musical who uses lighting, sets, and projection in a very impactful way like MJ the Musical has. You barely even realize that you're getting pulled into the tension of the numbers until they draw your attention to the setting change that you realize it is because of the precise lighting and projection combined with the hidden easy movements of the actual physical sets that you realize that the visual design played such a huge part in immersing you into the story and giving the more energetic numbers that bang which they need to have its full impact. MJ the Musical was first announced in 2018, and it was created by playwright Lynn Nottage, Christopher Wheeldon, and Global Associate Director Dante Keene. According to Nottage, she wanted to give the audience a little window into the demands and rigors of Michael's creative process, his quest for perfection, as he prepares for his legendary world tour. After being pushed back a little due to the COVID-19 pandemic, MJ the Musical first premiered on Broadway in 2021 with Miles Frost as their debuting Michael Jackson. Reviews on the musical were mixed and varied wildly, but the critical acclaim from the general audiences was the overarching key to its professional success, where they branched out and started their world tour in 2023. It drew inspiration from public information that is available about Michael Jackson's personal life, including the autobiographical book he had written in 1988 titled Moonwalk. Nottage makes it clear that she was interested in the psychological paradoxes of Michael Jackson, and she wanted to translate that on stage along with his unrelenting pursuit of perfection and why he's always innately chasing that need to achieve success and perfection as an artist. And so because of this intention behind the development of the musical when she wrote it, when the audience goes in to watch MJ the Musical, they would be taken on a psychological deep dive into MJ's psyche through his memories and how particular events in his life may have inspired some of his songs that we know and love today. In fact, it gets us thinking that maybe the reason why MJ was always so protective about his true feelings on all the events that has happened in his life was because they were already put out there through his music. And perhaps that was the reason why he was always so adamant about people listening to his music whenever conversations about his personal life is brought up. The character Rachel even brings this up during the musical, where she asks MJ if he really thinks it is possible to separate his life from his music when his whole life has just been about music. This brings us to one of the major thematic elements of this musical, where your art becomes your identity. We always talk about separating the art from the artist, but in Michael Jackson's case, each of his songs, his music, they all represented some form of himself that he kept dear to his heart. And this maybe has something to do with MJ always wanting to put on the best and the sincerest show for his fans, and he can't do that if he creates songs that he genuinely does not believe in. For example, and I'm going off the Moonwalk book, but it is one of the direct inspirations for the musical, so it's pretty much the same source material. He always loved singing I'll Be There, since he always felt a deep connection to the words, "We must bring salvation back." Billie Jean, he wrote out of his frustrations of groupies weaponizing sex and lies about pregnancies with his brothers. His own personal frustrations with the establishment and the media was conveyed through They Don't Care About Us, and completely unrelated to the musical, Scream. And of course, his compassionate nature to heal the world through Earth Song and Man in the Mirror. And these are only some of his songs that have been obvious as to having a personal link to his life. And so, through the character of MJ himself, The musical explores what it means to be an artist who could never separate the art from his life, especially when he's been thrust right onto the stage when he was only 5 years old and didn't know how else to live since music became his entire life. Another major thematic element of MJ the Musical is Michael Jackson's notorious, unrelenting drive to continue chasing perfection with his music and performance. It tackles memories in his life where he was constantly trying to look for ways to continue pushing the boundaries of music and performance. The musical explores that by taking us all the way back to MJ's childhood when he started singing with the Jackson 5, and his father had instilled in them the burning desire to not let white folks tell us black folks who we can be, and that no one in the world was going to look out for them or help them achieve success except themselves. In the same breath, he instilled in his children the philosophy that you must work hard to be the best so that you can be respected and have a future. MJ would then begin to show signs of that philosophy when he starts telling us about how when he was younger, while his brothers were backstage messing around in between performances, he would be watching the other performers through the curtains or the wings, continuously learning from them so that he could continue improving his own craft. It is then made much more obvious when he starts working with Quincy Jones on his Thriller album, and he begins to emphasize how important it was for him for the album to be able to sweep the awards at the Grammys and top the charts worldwide. And then, even in the current day of rehearsing for his Dangerous World Tour, even as his manager assures him that his performance and the concert was already spectacular and would go down in history as one of the greatest concerts of all time, MJ still shows dissatisfaction as he asks if it was perfect. It is a very hard-hitting thematic element of the musical that expands on Michael Jackson's already notorious penchant to continue going further with his craft, since it really humanizes him and encourages us to really think about where this almost existential chase for perfection really came from. And of course, if that wasn't already complicated enough, there is also the element of Michael Jackson's endless profound agape love for the world, where he truly believed that music could change the world and help make it a better place. And considering he was the biggest pop star on the planet ever since he pursued his solo career and could summon millions of dollars of stage equipment at his beck and call, it makes sense as to why he thinks that. Even today, he remains unbeatable as one of the largest icons in music, and not just as an artist, but as an artist who wanted to change the world through his music. And if it wasn't for his unfortunate death before he was supposed to embark on his final world tour back in 2009, with the fact that his concerts were already sold out and the amount of press that it garnered in anticipation for it, I genuinely think he could have changed the world if he hasn't done so already. Overall, MJ the Musical really succeeded in humanizing Michael Jackson by allowing us to explore the inner depths of his psyche and how that has contributed to his iconic music. It helps bring him down from the pedestal of being the king of pop to an artist who is striving for perfection and also wants to make the world a better place, all without losing the glitz and glam that is normally associated with him. The musical takes us through his life all the way to the beginning of when he first started singing, to the opening of the Dangerous World Tour, and with its songs repurposed and put in a contextual form of storytelling that makes us feel like we are listening to it for the first time again. So far, I think this is the best tribute one could possibly make for Michael Jackson, where his songs are contextualized as part of his humanity and his identity, while also showcasing the works of the brilliant crew who worked behind the scenes of the musical to bring it to life, to the spectacular cast members showcasing the best of the singers, the dancers, and the actors that musical theater has to offer. And the thematic elements of the musical really helps bring that gut punch home while we're all vibing to his songs in our seats. Michael Jackson remains as the top performer of song and dance in all of history, and his title of King of Pop will never be beaten. His influence is practically embedded in the DNA of almost all musical and dance artists we see today, that living up to his shadow is practically an impossibility. But every now and then there comes a piece of art that pays direct homage to the spirit of the man who was always in an unending chase for perfection and a desire to make the world a better place, and manages to emulate the spirit of the pop star while also paying respect to the worldwide influence he had with his music and dance. And one of them is MJ the Musical. If you have the chance to, I highly recommend seeing it. If you're an MJ fan, no doubt you'll love it. If you're not, I still recommend you see it, because the top-notch singing, the highly technical dancing and choreography, and the stylish glitzy sets and costume designs are so worth it. And that is it for MJ the Musical. I know I said in my last video that this month, April, would be devoted to talking about the future. But frankly, with the release of Michael in the cinemas, and MJ the Musical currently showing in Brisbane, the opportunity to revisit the past of a global superstar was just too good to pass up. But I promise you next month, we will be talking about the future. Hopefully. Honestly, just drop your expectations a little bit about what I will promise you next month, and let's just enjoy wherever the wind takes us next. There's a lot of beautiful things to be inspired by in this world, and I hope you all continue to find them. In the meantime, I wish you all a wonderful rest of April, and I will see you all next time in May. Bye!